What is the one belief you hold so deeply, so profoundly, that you would be willing to face the ultimate cost for it? It is a question that feels distant in our modern world of comfort and convenience. We speak of our convictions, our values, our principles. But in the quiet moments of reflection, we might wonder about their true depth. Would they stand firm under pressure? Would they remain unshaken when everything we hold dear is threatened? This is not merely a hypothetical exercise. For the earliest Christians, this question was not a matter of philosophy, but of daily reality. Their story challenges us to look inward and ask what foundation our own lives are truly built upon. To understand the age of the martyrs, we must first step back into the world of the Roman Empire. This was a vast, powerful civilization, known for its engineering, its laws, and its military might. It was also a deeply religious society, with a pantheon of gods and goddesses woven into the very fabric of public life. From the smallest household shrine to the grandest temple in the city center, religion was a civic duty, a patriotic act that ensured the favor of the gods and the stability of the empire. Loyalty to Rome was demonstrated through participation in these public rituals, a system that had worked for centuries. Into this highly structured world, a new faith began to spread. It was a faith born not in Rome, but in the small province of Judea. It spoke of one God, a personal and loving Creator, and of His Son, Jesus Christ, who had overcome death itself. This was not just another deity to be added to the pantheon. This faith, Christianity, demanded exclusive allegiance. Its followers declared that Jesus was Lord, a title reserved for the emperor himself. This declaration was not just a spiritual statement, it was a political one. It created a fundamental clash of loyalties, setting the stage for one of history's most dramatic confrontations between faith and power. The first major eruption of state-sponsored persecution occurred under Emperor Nero in Rome around the year 64. A great fire had devastated the city, and the populace, angry and homeless, needed someone to blame. Nero, whose own ambitions for rebuilding the city were well known, found a convenient scapegoat in the small, misunderstood community of Christians. They were a fringe group, seen as secretive and strange, making them an easy target. The historian Tacitus records the horrific cruelty inflicted upon them, not because they were proven to be arsonists, but simply to satisfy the emperor's need to deflect blame and the public's desire for retribution. The accusations leveled against the early Christians were born from misunderstanding and suspicion. Because they refused to worship the Roman gods, they were branded as atheists, a serious charge in a world that believed its prosperity depended on divine favor. Their private gatherings, often held in secret to avoid trouble, fueled rumors of dark rituals. The talk of consuming the body and blood of their Lord in the Eucharist was twisted into accusations of cannibalism. Their emphasis on brotherly and sisterly love was perversely interpreted as suggestions of incest. These slanderous claims painted them as enemies of the social order, a dangerous cult that threatened the Roman way of life. For a Roman official, the solution was simple. All a Christian had to do was perform a small act of civic loyalty. Burn a pinch of incense on an altar before a statue of the emperor and declare, "Caesar is Lord." To many, this seemed like a trivial request, a mere formality. But for the Christians, it was an impossible demand. To declare Caesar as Lord was to deny the supreme lordship of Jesus Christ. It was an act of idolatry that would betray the very core of their faith. That single pinch of incense represented a choice between the security of this world and their hope for the next. Their refusal was seen not as piety, but as stubbornness and treason. The word we use for them, martyr, comes from the Greek word martes, which simply means witness. In a court of law, a witness is someone who testifies to the truth of what they have seen or heard. For the early Christians, their entire lives and ultimately their deaths became a testimony. They were not just dying for a set of ideas. They were bearing witness to a person, Jesus Christ, whom they believed was the living Son of God. Their public trials and executions became their final courtroom, their last opportunity to testify to the truth that had transformed their lives. One of the earliest and most compelling voices from this era is that of Ignatius of Antioch. He was a bishop, an elder leader in the church, arrested around the year 107 and sentenced to death in Rome. We know of his final journey because of a series of letters he wrote to various churches along the way. These are not letters of despair or fear. Instead, they are filled with a passionate, almost joyful anticipation of his coming death. He saw his martyrdom not as a tragic end, but as the ultimate act of discipleship, the moment he would most perfectly imitate his Savior. In his letter to the Christians in Rome, Ignatius makes a startling plea. He begs them not to intervene on his behalf, not to use their influence to try and save his life. He feared that their well-meaning compassion would rob him of his prize. He wrote, "I am writing to all the churches and I enjoin all, that I am dying willingly for God's sake, if you do not hinder it. I beseech you, do not show unseasonable kindness to me. Let me be food for the wild beasts, through whom I can attain to God." His focus was entirely on his spiritual destination, and he saw his physical suffering as the pathway to get there. Ignatius used a powerful metaphor to describe his impending death. "I am the wheat of God," he wrote, "and am ground by the teeth of the wild beasts, that I may be found the pure bread of Christ." He envisioned his body being broken in the Colosseum's arena, not as an act of destruction, but as a process of transformation, like wheat being ground into flour to become a holy offering. This profound reimagining of suffering and death reveals the depth of a faith that saw beyond the physical horror to a spiritual reality of ultimate union with God. His witness set a powerful example for generations to come. Decades later, another elderly bishop faced a similar fate. His name was Polycarp, the bishop of Smyrna, a man so respected that he was known to have been a disciple of the Apostle John himself. When a new wave of persecution swept through his city, his congregation urged him to go into hiding. He did so reluctantly, but was eventually betrayed and arrested. The accounts of his martyrdom tell us that when the soldiers came for him, the aged man greeted them calmly, offered them a meal, and asked only for an hour to pray before they took him away. Polycarp's prayer, we are told, was so full of grace that his captors began to regret their task. They brought him into the city stadium, which was filled with a roaring crowd eager for a spectacle. The proconsul, the Roman governor, took pity on the old man and urged him to save himself. "Curse Christ," the proconsul said, "and I will release you." It was a simple test, the same one countless Christians faced, offering an easy escape from a terrible death. The crowd waited, the governor waited, and the fate of the 86-year-old man hung in the balance. Polycarp's response has echoed through the centuries as a timeless declaration of faithful endurance. He looked the proconsul in the eye and said, 86 years I have served him, and he has done me no wrong. How then can I blaspheme my King and my Savior?" His words were not spoken with defiance, but with a simple, unshakable loyalty born of a lifetime of love and experience. In that moment, he was not just an old man on trial. He was a living testament to the goodness of the God he had served for nearly a century. The furious crowd demanded he be burned alive. A pyre was quickly constructed, and Polycarp was bound to the stake. As the flames rose around him, the ancient accounts describe a miracle. They say the fire formed an arch around his body, like a swelling sail filled with wind, and he stood in the midst, not as flesh that is burnt, but as bread that is baked, or as gold and silver glowing in a furnace. When it was clear the fire would not consume him, a soldier was ordered to execute him with a dagger. His end, like his life, was a powerful witness to a faith that even fire could not destroy. The story of Polycarp's calm courage and unwavering loyalty solidified his legacy as a true shepherd of his flock. His life and death became a powerful symbol of pastoral faithfulness. He did not seek out martyrdom, but when it came to him, he did not shrink from it. He showed his people, and all who would later read his story, that a lifetime of quiet faithfulness prepares the heart for the ultimate test. His legacy was not one of flashy miracles or fiery sermons, but of the profound strength found in a long obedience in the same direction. The geography of martyrdom now shifts to the vibrant Roman province of North Africa, specifically to the city of Carthage, around the year 203. Here we meet one of the most remarkable figures in early church history, a young, well-educated noblewoman named Vibia Perpetua. She was a recent convert to Christianity, still a catechumen preparing for baptism, when she was arrested along with several others, including her slave, Felicity. Perpetua was a nursing mother, and her story is intensely personal, preserved in the diary she kept during her imprisonment. Perpetua's greatest trial in prison came not from her captors, but from her own beloved father. He was a pagan, and he was heartbroken and desperate. He came to her in prison, begging her to consider her family, to think of her infant son who would be left without a mother. He pleaded with her to perform the simple ritual of sacrifice to the emperor. "Have pity on my gray hairs," he cried. "Have pity on your father. Think of your son, who will not be able to live without you." It was a powerful appeal to every natural human emotion, a test of love and loyalty that must have been almost unbearable for the young mother. Yet Perpetua's diary reveals a resolve forged by a faith that transcended even these sacred family bonds. She wrote of her grief at her father's sorrow, but she remained firm. To her father she simply said, "I cannot be called anything other than what I am, a Christian." Her prison diary is also filled with a series of powerful visions. In one, she saw a golden ladder reaching up to heaven, guarded by a dragon but leading to a beautiful garden. In another, she saw herself transformed into a male gladiator, defeating a fearsome Egyptian opponent. These visions gave her immense courage, assuring her that her struggle was not a defeat, but a path to glorious victory. At her side throughout this ordeal was Felicity, a servant girl who was also a devoted Christian. Felicity faced her own unique and terrifying uncertainty. She was 8 months pregnant at the time of her arrest, and Roman law forbade the execution of pregnant women. Her great fear was not death itself, but that she would give birth too late and be left behind, denied the chance to face martyrdom alongside the companions she loved. She prayed fervently that she would be able to join her friends in their final witness. Her prayers were answered. Just days before the scheduled games in the arena, Felicity went into labor in the harsh conditions of the prison. Her cries of pain were noticed by a guard, who mocked her, saying, You who are in such distress now, what will you do when you are thrown to the wild beasts?" Her response was a profound statement of faith in the face of suffering. "What I am suffering now," she said, "I suffer by myself. But then another will be inside me who will suffer for me, just as I shall be suffering for him." She believed that Christ himself would grant her the strength she needed in the arena. The day of the games arrived. Perpetua and Felicity were led into the amphitheater at Carthage. The account of their martyrdom, which includes Perpetua's own diary, tells us they walked from the prison to the arena, as if to heaven, with a happy look and a graceful step. They faced the crowd with serene confidence, their very demeanor a silent rebuke to the bloodlust of the spectators. When they were brought out, they were scourged, and then a wild heifer was set upon them, a particularly cruel choice meant to mock their womanhood. The animal gored them, but did not kill them outright. The account describes how Perpetua, even in her dazed and injured state, showed remarkable composure. She sat up, tidied her disheveled hair, for it was not right for a martyr to suffer with her hair in disorder, and went to help the injured Felicity to her feet. They stood together, a noblewoman and her slave, united as sisters in faith, awaiting the end. Finally, they were led to the center of the arena, to be dispatched by gladiators. Perpetua herself is said to have guided the trembling executioner's sword to her own throat, her final act one of resolute courage. Not all martyrs were bishops or young women. Some came to the faith through intellect and reason. Such was the case of Justin, who would become known as Justin Martyr. He was born a pagan in Samaria and spent his youth as a philosopher, seeking truth through the teachings of the Stoics, the Peripatetics, and the Platonists. He was a dedicated student of logic and metaphysics, believing that pure reason was the path to understanding the divine. Yet he found all these philosophical systems ultimately unsatisfying, leaving his deepest questions unanswered. His conversion came after a chance encounter with an old man while walking by the sea. This mysterious figure challenged Justin's reliance on human philosophy, pointing him instead to the ancient Hebrew prophets and to the person of Jesus Christ. The old man argued that true knowledge of God was not something that could be discovered by reason alone, but was something that had to be revealed by God himself. This conversation ignited a spark in Justin. He began to read the scriptures and found in them the answers he had been seeking his entire life. He embraced Christianity as the one true and profitable philosophy. Justin did not abandon his philosophical training. Instead, he used it in service of his new faith. He traveled to Rome and opened a school of Christian philosophy, engaging in public debates and writing extensively. His most famous works are his Apologies, which were addressed to the Roman emperor and the Senate. In these texts, he did not plead for mercy, but presented a reasoned, logical defense of Christianity. He argued that Christians were not atheists or traitors, but were, in fact, the most virtuous and loyal citizens of the empire, because their ethics were grounded in the teachings of Christ. His high profile and public defense of Christianity inevitably attracted the attention of the authorities. Around the year 165, Justin and some of his students were arrested and brought before the Roman prefect, Rusticus. The transcript of his trial reveals a fascinating intellectual exchange, a final debate between Roman civic religion and Christian philosophy. Rusticus demanded that Justin sacrifice to the gods. Justin calmly refused, explaining his belief in the one true God. When threatened with torture and death, Justin replied, "We desire nothing more than to suffer for our Lord Jesus Christ, for this gives us salvation and joyfulness before his dreadful judgment seat. He was subsequently beheaded, earning his name, Justin Martyr. While persecutions had occurred in waves for over 2 centuries, the most intense and systematic attempt to wipe out Christianity began in the year 303 under Emperor Diocletian. This was not a localized or spontaneous outburst. It was a carefully planned, empire-wide campaign known as the Great Persecution. Diocletian issued a series of edicts demanding that all churches be destroyed, all sacred scriptures be handed over and burned, and all clergy be arrested. Later edicts commanded all citizens, on pain of death, to offer sacrifice to the Roman gods. The suffering during this period was immense and widespread. For nearly a decade, Christians across the empire faced a brutal choice: apostatize or die. Historical accounts from Eusebius and others detail the horrific tortures devised for those who refused to renounce their faith. Christians were burned, crucified, thrown to beasts, or sent to the mines for a life of hard labor. Yet this campaign, designed to be the final solution to the Christian problem, ultimately failed. The sheer number of Christians and their stubborn refusal to abandon their faith made their complete eradication impossible. It was during this era that the North African theologian Tertullian penned his now famous observation: "The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church." This was the great paradox of the age of persecution. Every execution, intended to intimidate and stamp out the faith, often had the opposite effect. The courage, peace, and even joy with which the martyrs faced their deaths was a profound and unsettling witness to the pagans who watched. It made them wonder, what kind of faith could inspire such devotion? What God could make people unafraid of death? The persecutions, far from destroying the church, actually purified it and fueled its astonishing growth. 2,000 years later, these stories can feel like ancient history, tales of a brutal world far removed from our own. It is tempting to see the martyrs as spiritual superheroes, figures whose incredible courage is beyond our reach. But to do so is to miss the point of their witness. They were ordinary people, bakers, soldiers, mothers, scholars, and slaves, who were captured by an extraordinary love. Their story forces us to ask what it means to be a witness for our faith, not in a Roman amphitheater, but in the complex world we inhabit today. For many in the world, persecution is still a violent and present reality. But for others, the challenges are more subtle, yet still significant. It can be the fear of being ridiculed for our beliefs in the workplace or at school. It can be the social pressure to conform to values that contradict our faith. It can be the internal struggle against apathy, the temptation to choose comfort and convenience over costly discipleship. In our own way, we face a daily choice. Will we offer that small pinch of incense to the prevailing culture, or will we stand firm in our convictions, however small the issue may seem? The spirit of the martyrs is not just about dying for faith, but about how we truly live for it. The enduring echo of the martyrs is not a call to seek suffering, but a powerful invitation to cultivate a faith that can withstand it. Their legacy is a testament to the fact that the light of profound conviction cannot be extinguished by the darkness of oppression. They show us that true strength is not found in power or earthly security, but in a hope that is anchored in eternity. Their story is a mirror, challenging us to look at our own lives and ask, what is the foundation upon which we are built, and is it strong enough to stand when the storms come?